So who am I? I'm Serena di Cecilia, and if you are from Europe, I'm your contact, together with my colleague Yanis Panetas, depending on where you are, but feel free to send me an email. Here on the screen, there is my email address, which is serena.di.cecilia@bd.com, or easier would be serena@flowjo.com, in case you don't remember this one. As this webinar is recorded, you can rewatch it later on. So even if you miss something, don't worry. You'll find the recording on the webpage of FlowJo under webinars, under recorded webinars, probably tomorrow or by the beginning of next week. So don't worry at all. Ask your questions if you have any. If this is interactive, I'm really happy, so it doesn't look like I'm talking to myself. And let's get started. Oops. Okay. So the first thing that I want to show you regarding FlowJo, besides the actual software, is the FlowJo website. So why do I want to show you the FlowJo website? For multiple reasons. The first one, it's because FlowJo is a desktop application. So you will need to download FlowJo from the website. So there is no specific way to download FlowJo unless you just go on the website and you see right here, there is a download button where you can just click and download FlowJo. So depending on the machine that you are using, you can choose to download FlowJo for Mac or for Windows. And you will see that there is a pop-up right here at the left corner to sign up for our email. Now, if you are here, either you knew about this webinar because of social media or because you received an email. In case you didn't sign up for our email, I just invite you to do so, because you will get notifications on any upcoming webinar or anything new that it's coming up within FlowJo. So when you are on the FlowJo website, you see that there are several areas right here. You see the FlowJo area, the BD Research Cloud area, which is our cloud environment for collaboration. And then we have a SeqGeek area, which is our software for single-cell sequencing analysis. The FlowJo Exchange, which is the repository for all the extra tools that we have available within FlowJo, and the FlowJo University. So after downloading FlowJo, you can use FlowJo if you do have a license. A license can be a dongle or can be a subscription, but in case you don't have a license, you can always ask for a free trial. So we do offer on the FlowJo page right here, the opportunity to have a free trial right here, where you can use FlowJo for 30 days on your own FCS files. So you can perform your own analysis. You don't need demo data and so on. And you can use it for a month for free. So if you don't have FlowJo, just ask for a free trial if you want to keep working with it. The most important part, I believe, of the FlowJo website, it's for sure the Learn area. So everything I will show you today can be found within the Learn area. First of all, we do have the webinars area, so you can sign up for the next upcoming webinars. This is the webinar of today, and then we will have a webinar for BD Research Cloud, for CellView Lens plugin, and so on. We have monthly webinars for basic and advanced features of FlowJo, so you can sign up and join live as this morning. Or if you miss any of these webinars, you can always go all the way to the bottom of the page right here and find the recorded webinars. As this one, all the webinars are recorded, so you can rewatch them anytime. So this webinar will be about an hour. But if you don't have an hour to watch a webinar, you can always navigate the FlowJo University, which is a repository of short videos on all the different tools and tasks within FlowJo. So if you navigate within the FlowJo area right here, you will find all the different topics. And for example, you can find tips and tricks in FlowJo or how to get started. And whenever you click onto these areas, you will find on the right all the different videos by title. So if you just click on any of them, you will see that there are small videos. These are 5 to 10 minutes videos, so are easy to check. And in case you don't remember something, you will find it within the FlowJo University. And eventually, you will always have to your disposal the FlowJo software help documentation, which is right here, which I call my Bible. So in here, there are all the informations that you need to have regarding FlowJo, how to perform any action, how to perform anything within your analysis. It's in here in the FlowJo documentation. You can type anything you want within the search area right here, for example, groups. And you will see that everything related to that topic will come out under form of a hyperlink. So you can always click on any of them and you will find all the screenshots on how to perform a workflow or how to perform an action within FlowJo. So just keep in mind that these resources are there and are for you to be checked anytime you need. You can follow us, as I mentioned before, on all the social media. We have Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, basically all of them. And we like to share when is the next webinar upcoming or when is the next event where we will be at conferences and so on. One important thing to mention is that besides my email address, you can always keep in mind that we do have a technical support available at flowjo@bd.com, which will be happy to help you. So just keep in mind this information besides my email address. The technical support is based in Oregon, which is US West Coast. So you will get an answer in the afternoon if you are in Europe, but they will always be happy to answer and to help, to screen share and to troubleshoot. Okay. So what we will look at today? Today we will look at the FlowJo workspace, how to load our samples and import your data. We will create groups, create and edit groups, and create and edit keywords. Then we will navigate the graphical window. We will add statistics, and then finally we will create a layout and a table for your needs. So today, demo data set that I will use, it's also available, part of it is also available on the FlowJo website. This demo data set, it's a pretty common experiment. It's a phosphoflow and intracellular cytokine staining. So we basically have thaw and rest cryopreserved human PBMCs overnight, and then we stimulate with PMA plus inomycin for 2 hours, then stain for viability and surface antigens, and then stimulate with PI for other 20 minutes. So we basically have 2 stimulations. We have a stain for surface antigens, and then fixation and permeabilization, and stain for intracellular antigens. So we basically have 2 stainings for surface antigens and for intracellular antigens, just because we want to cover up any possibility within your experiment. It's an 8 colors experiment, and as I mentioned, these are PBMC. So since we have 2 stimulations, we have 4 different combinations. What we want to see at the end of the experiment, it's basically how is the production of phosphor ERK, interferon gamma, and perforin after stimulation, which are our intracellular markers. So the data set is pretty big, but we don't actually need to consider all of them, okay? Just imagine of applying the same full workflow to your own data and to customize it to your experiment. So we have 5 donors for a total of 20 experimental all stain samples, because we have 4 different conditions for each donor. So 4 conditions for each donor, if we have 5 donors, is a total of 20 experimental all stain samples. Then we have controls, which are our fluorescence -1, our FMOs, and then we have compensation controls within the experiment. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is opening up the FlowJo workspace. So whenever you access FlowJo, depending on the kind of license, as I mentioned before, you will always find something like this, which is called the workspace. The workspace of FlowJo is divided into different areas. There is the first area, which is the gray one at the top, which is the activity bar. This activity bar will allow you to perform all the different activities within FlowJo. And you will see that if you navigate under FlowJo or File or Edit or Workspace, the actions underneath will be changing. Similar actions are grouped in the same activity tab. So all the actions, for example, related to statistics will be gathering into the statistics tab. All the actions related to keywords will be gathering into the keywords tab, and so on. The second area, it's called the group area, which is this one where you see group. In here, you will always find two default groups, the all samples group and the compensation group. The all samples group will include all the samples that you will load into your workspace. Doesn't matter at what time of the day or at what time of the year you load samples into that specific workspace, you will always find all your samples under the all samples group. The compensation group will include compensation controls if you have any in your experiment. Plus, in here, you will find the new groups that you will be creating for your experiment. The third area underneath here, it's called the samples and gating strategy area, and is where we will access our samples and where we will create the gating strategy. Just keep in mind that FlowJo can be customized. So customization of FlowJo can be performed under your preferences up here. The preferences can be found under the heart icon. So if I click on that, I will have access to all the different ways to customize my FlowJo. I can customize my workspace, for example, and I can choose to visualize my files with an FCS default name or a short file name. But the most important thing in this window right here is to remember to enable the auto saving that you see here. This will allow FlowJo to automatically save your work, and you can choose an interval of time that can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and so on. Just keep in mind that this is really important, because if you don't have it active and you forget to manually save your workspace, if you run out of power or battery and so on, your work will be not saved. To go back, I can just click on Show All. And in here, for example, I can change the size, the style of my fonts for my workspace list, for the statistics on graphs, for the tables, and so on. For example, if I want to increase the size of the font for my workspace list, because right now it's quite small, I can just select it and then choose a size right here. So I could place it to 24, for example. And you see that there is a funny message from our engineers right here, but it's basically a preview of what you will see. So let's just put it at 18. Okay, so just we are increasing a little bit the size of our workspace list, and I can click OK. Now you see that it's quite bigger compared to before, and it's easier to check. On local, I will find information regarding my country, and my advice on this is always to set it to United States. I know we are in Europe and we are not, or on the other side of the world, and we are not in the United States, but this will help you to have a match within digits and numbers. So instead of having dots and commas and this mismatch, if you set it to United States, there will be a match within the names, within the numbers, time and date. In license, you will have information regarding your license. So this can be your portal account, or it can be a serial number, and so on. And as long as you go through all the preferences, you can set and customize them. And once you click OK, your preferences are set and are saved. So you don't need to redo that. Okay. So first thing first, let's start by loading our samples within the workspace. FlowJo has different ways to load samples. You can either drag and drop a folder from a location. Okay, so for example, I have my data right here, which are called PFICS, phosphoflow and intracellular cytokine staining. So I could drag and drop the full folder, or if I go under FlowJo, I can click on Add Samples right here, and I have two options. The first one is adding samples from a location on my computer, and the second one is adding samples from BD Research Cloud, which, as I mentioned before, it's a cloud environment that allows collaborations and it also allows you to store your data. If you're interested, there is a BD Research Cloud webinar coming up soon. I believe it's like next week or something like that. So at the moment, this webinar will not cover BD Research Cloud, so I'm going to load my samples just from a location on my computer. So I can just click Add Samples, and I will have a path right here. So FlowJo will ask me, where are my samples? My samples are actually on my desktop, and I can select the full folder and just click Choose. Okay. Now, I do have all of my samples that were loaded into my workspace. And as you see here, I have my compensation controls based on beads and cells. I have my FMOs, which are my controls, and I have my donors, which are labeled with LD, that stands for live donors. So the first thing that I invite you to do, and there is also a video on how to create groups, is indeed to create groups. Create groups will allow you to keep your samples separated and to mirror your experiment. So in this case, we have 3 different data sets. Okay, we have 3 different sets of samples, let's say. So 1 set of samples for compensation, 1 set of samples for control, and 1 set of samples which are the full stain. So the idea would be to create a group for each set of samples. So the first thing that I can do, I can select my compensation group and just leave in this group the compensation controls, because I don't need the rest. If you're interested in knowing how to perform compensation or go deeper into compensation, there is a nice webinar on the website that covers only compensation. So I invite you to check that. So I can just select all the samples that I don't want in this group and just click Cancel. FlowJo will ask me if I'm sure I want to delete these samples, and I can say yes. So now in the compensation group, I have only 12 samples, which is what I want to do. I see in the chat, there is someone asking where I can find the records of this important meeting. You will find it on the FlowJo webpage under recorded webinars. The next step will be creating a group for my stained samples and creating a group for my controls. So I can either create a new group by using the create group icon right here, or I can edit this one. So FlowJo now is asking me to save the workspace because it's been 5 minutes of activity. So I can just say yes, save. And now what I want to do is to create a group that only includes my live donors. So I could go in here and just delete all the samples that I don't need, or there is an automatic way, which will be helpful for me. What I can do, I can edit this group right here and click on right click on the group and select Edit Group Properties. When I do that, FlowJo asks me to modify this group. So I can assign a name to this group that can be my donors. I can assign a color, a style, and a role if I'm working with, if this is my test group, or if it's my control group or my compensation group, and so on. And I can, if I want to do it automatically, what I can do is telling FlowJo to insert automatically in this group all the files that in their name contains a specific word. To do that, I will tell FlowJo to use the keyword file name. So I can just use under keyword right here, $FIL. By doing this, FlowJo will scan all the file names, okay? By scanning all the file names, I can assign some rules and say, Within the file names, just include in this group all the files that in their name contains a specific word, which can be LD. So if I apply changes and close, right now I have a group that is called donor that has 20 samples in it, and all of them are called LD. Or this is the automatic way to create groups based on file name, or I can manually create a group and just select the create group icon right here, assign a name. This would be my FMOs or controls. I can assign a role, and then I can just create a group. If you do that, you see that inside there are no files because I didn't specify any rule to include the files. So what I can do, I can take my files from all samples, and and these are my FMOs files, and I can just move them all the way within the specific group. Okay, there is an interesting question in the chat, which is, when should I use the synchronize from the group? So I will show you now how you can work with a gating strategy applied to a group, and I will also explain what happens when you synchronize a group. Okay, just give me a second and I will show that. Okay, so so the first thing that I want to do is creating a group. The second thing that I may want to do, or I may need to do, is adding extra informations to my files. So we were pretty lucky in these examples right here because my colleagues named the files extremely nicely. So I see exactly which is the donor ID, I see the simulation condition, and I also see the well ID for each sample. But sometimes we may not be this lucky and may not have these informations within the file name. So if we want to add extra informations to the file name, we can do that by using keywords. Keywords are metadata that can be added to your FCS files within FlowJo. So let's say that now we want to add a keyword for our donor number or donor ID. I can just go on add keyword right here under FlowJo. And FlowJo will suggest me as a first keyword, the specimen ID. That could be, or could be a donor ID or whatever you are working with. Okay, so now you see I have another column that has been created, and I could either type it in manually, LD1 or donor1 and so on. But you can imagine that this is time consuming, and I could possibly make typos when I'm typing manually. So I could assign keywords automatically. How do I do that? If I go under workspace, I could use within the keyword tabs the create keyword value series. What this action will do will assign a series of values to my specific keyword. In this case, my values will be my donor's ID. So I can use the create keyword value series, and this can be a numerical key, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or an actual word. So if I click on keyword, I can have my donor1 or LD1, my donor2 or LD2, my donor3 or LD4. You know, these are not in order. This could be anyway LD1, donor1, donor2, donor3, and donor4 and 5. And before I actually click OK, I will need to assign some rules to FlowJo. So FlowJo will fill 20 values starting from the current one because it's correct, because I'm in the donors group where I have 20 samples. But then I will tell FlowJo to use each value 4 times before changing to the next one. Why do I want to do that? It's because I have 4 different FCS files coming from each individual donor. And then if you see that you cannot click OK, it's because there is an information missing in this window. And indeed, FlowJo is asking me on the top left corner to select the keyword. So my keyword is my donor ID. Okay, and now I can click OK. Now you see that all my donors are labeled and named. There is this extra information next to it. This could be just imaging of your experiment, could be your time point, could be your treatment, could be your, I don't know, control versus treated, and so on. And I can create a second keyword for my stimulation condition as well. So I can, again, go on add keyword, and this can be my stim condition. And even here, I could type stimulation condition number 1, 2, 3, and 4, or I could type NS plus NS, NS plus BI, all the different combinations. So I could type it in manually, NS plus NS, and so on, or I can just create a series of values for this. So if I do that, and again, I go on keywords, my conditions will be NS plus NS, or condition 1, NS plus PI, or condition 2, PI plus NS, or condition 3, and PI plus PI, or condition 4. In this case, FlowJo will fill 20 values, which is correct. And I will tell FlowJo to use each value one time before changing to the next one, because for each donor, I only have one of these specific stimulation condition. But then I will tell FlowJo to start over every 4 samples. This way, it will assign each stimulation condition to each donor, and then it will start again from the first one. So if I now click OK, I have all my stimulation conditions here. So keywords are useful whenever you forget to add these informations to your file names during the acquisition, and you don't want to go back to the acquisition software to edit the file name, because in FlowJo you cannot edit the file names. Okay, but what you can do is adding extra information to recognize your files. Okay, so now that we finally have set the workspace, this is, I know it's quite boring as a part, but it's the most important part, because if you set your workspace in a correct way, then you're free to go, and your analysis is fast and easy and much nicer, I would say. Okay, so let's start. If you realize that next to each FCS file, there are 3 different icons. There is a diamond, there is a circle, and there is a square. So the square icon, or the grid, is related to the compensation matrix. And for anything related to compensation, I invite you to watch the webinar on compensation, because it will not be covered in this webinar. The first icon is a diamond and will be lighten up whenever I open up a plot from that specific sample. So if I now double click on the file and I open it up, I have a plot and the diamond is blue. So it means I'm working with that sample right now. And the second icon will allow me to inspect the file. So if I double click on this icon right here, I will have a really big window with many informations in it, but really useful for me. So the first thing that I see on the left are all the keywords that were associated to my file from the instrument. So I didn't even know that my file had all these informations related to it. But now, whenever you open it up, you see that here there are all the specific informations related to that file, like the lasers, the filters, and so on. But on top, you will find useful information such as the date of the acquisition, the operative system, the cytometer, the file name, and the file path. You will also find the values for the compensation, and you will find parameter names and parameter stains. What is the difference? The parameter name is, for example, FITC, PE, PE size 7, and so on. The parameter stain is CD4, CD8, and so on. The most important, not the most important, one of the really important things in this window is right here at the bottom of the window, where FlowJo performs a quality check of your file. So you can basically see the median of each parameter plotted versus time. So as long as the median, which is the green line, is included into the 2 dot lines, which are the 2 standard deviations, it means that the flow rate was stable. Everything was fine during the acquisition. There were no clogs, no bubble air, and so on. And FlowJo gives you a badge next to your file saying the quality of the file is okay. Otherwise, you have a warning saying there could be some problems. We do have a really, really nice webinar on quality check from my colleague Veronica that I also invite you to watch if you want to go deeper into all the tools that we have for quality check. But for the basics and for an initial step, this can help you. So now I have my blue badge saying that the quality of my file was okay because the median value of each parameter was included into the 2 standard deviations. And I could go one by one, or I can just go under tools and click on check sample quality. This will automatically check the quality of all of my samples. So now I'm ready to start. I can open up a plot, so just by double clicking, and whenever you double click on a plot, you will see that FlowJo will plot by default in the first graphical window physical parameters. So you will see side versus forward values, parameters. So on the top left corner, you have all the tools to create a gate. And in this case, what I can use to create my gate can be the ellipse gate that is right here. So I can just create a gate around this. And by default, FlowJo will suggest me that these are lymphocytes. I can also change the name. You can edit, type, whatever you want. So I will just leave it at lymphocytes. What are the green dots? The difference between the green and blue dots is the median value included in 1 of 2 standard deviations, but it's still okay. Okay, so now I have my first gate created. These are my lymphocytes. I see the statistics right here, basically the percentage from the parental gate, and I can create a second gate. To create a second gate or a child gate, I can just double click inside the first one. So if I double click on this, now this is what I gated on, and I can change my parameters just by clicking on the axis. So the next step for me would be excluding doublets. So I can use forward area versus forward height. And I can use, in this case, for example, a polygon gate that will allow me to have more freedom to navigate around my populations. I want to exclude all the doublets. And if I double click, it will close automatically. Every time that FlowJo has a physical parameter height versus area, will suggest you that these are single cells, which is correct. And then I can adjust my gate in case I need. I can move it and so on. Within my single cells, I then want to select my live cells. So I have a dead marker, and I can use, in this case, for example, a rectangle gate, and just select my live cells. I can name them live. And within my live cells, I now want to select my CD3 cells. So let's not forget what we are doing. What is the experiment about is to see how much is the production of interferon gamma, phosphorus, and perforin after stimulation. So in this case, I have several options I could use for my gate. I could use, for example, an auto gate, which is this icon right here. And this will create a gate automatically around my population based on density. Or I could use a pencil gate. And you will see I'm really bad with this one. So this is basically a pencil. So you draw a gate literally as you have a pen in your hands. But I'm really, really bad with this gate. So I tend not to use it. Okay. So I'm just going to use a rectangle gate in this case. And this will be my CD3 cells. Okay. And within my CD3 cells, I now want to have my CD4 versus CD8 cells. In this case, you could use, for example, a quad gate that will divide the area into 4, or you could use curly quad that will take in account of the spread, or you can use a spider quad where you fix the center and you can move the axis around. So these are all the options to create a gate, but I am a fan of the rectangle gate. I invite you not to do that, but for speed reasons, I'm just going to use a rectangle gate. So this is my CD4 population, and this is my CD8 population. What's important to notice here is that you see the hierarchy right here on your workspace. So all these gates are coming from a parental gate, and then we have CD4 and CD8, which are coming from the same gate of CD3. So they are on the same level. Okay, so the way I'm looking at the plot right now, it's called pseudo color, and it's the default way of FlowJo to show you your data. You can always change your plot, your visualization right here under options. So if I don't want to look at it as a pseudo color, I can look at it as a contour plot. I can show the outliers. I can increase or decrease the level of contouring right here, or I could use a density plot, which is similar to the pseudo color, but black and white in my case, or I can make it white and blue, something like that. You can always change the colors right here. Okay. I could eventually use a dot plot, which is the one that we are mostly used to, and you can increase or decrease the number of events right here. So you can go lower than 8,000 or higher than 8,000, or you can visualize it as a histogram. Keep in mind that every time that you are looking at a histogram in a graphical window, you only look at one marker. So in this case, we are looking at the negative and positive populations for CD8, and we lost the CD4 because we are visualizing it as a histogram. So you cannot look at two markers at the same time as a histogram in the graphical window. So if you're looking at a co-expression, probably the histogram is not the best way to go. And lastly, we do have a zebra plot, which is kind of a vintage way to visualize the plots. So there are people that still like that. But I'm just going to proceed with my pseudo color. I remove the smoothing, and now I see each individual event. Okay, so now I have my gating strategy. What am I going to do after this? I could proceed to my next sample and do it manually, or I can just take the full gating strategy and just go under workspace and select copy analysis to group. Since all of my samples will need to be analyzed with the same gating strategy, I can use this option right here. So if I copy the analysis to the group, you see that now the group has a gating strategy. And now I do have all my samples analyzed with the same gating strategy. I could then scroll down, so I can open up a plot. And this is my first sample. You see my diamond here. But I could navigate through the rest of my samples and check how the gates are. So I could use the right arrow and move to my next sample, and I could adjust the gates and so on. Now it comes to the question, when do I use the synchronized gate, the synchronized group? If you wish to have exactly the same gates for all of your samples, not like in this case where I'm editing and moving gates, you can use the synchronize option within the edit group properties right here. If I make it to synchronize, what happens is that whenever I change or edit one gate in one single samples, since the group is synchronized, the gate will be changed on all the rest of the samples exactly the same. Hope I answered your question. Okay, so now we have our gating strategy here, and we still do have FMOs. So what I can do, I can use the same gating strategy for my FMOs. So I could just select the full gating strategy and apply that to my FMOs group. Now, all my FMOs has as well the same gating strategy. And as you know, FMOs can help to define where to set the gates when you have, for example, markers that are difficult to identify, or expression that is difficult to identify because it's changing in different conditions. So in this case, since I have intracellular markers, what I can do, I can collapse all right here. I could take the FMO that does not contain interferon gamma, and within my CD8, I can just select CD8 versus interferon gamma. Now, in these two, FMOs stands for fluorescence -1. So in this group, I do have all the different markers except for interferon gamma. So this means that my negative population ends here, and whenever I have a positive population, will start about here. So that's what FMOs help you to do. So I can set my gate, which should be my positive gate, okay, whenever I have interferon gamma in the tube and whenever interferon gamma is expressed. Now you see that I have a new gate that has been created that has a different color. So I could use this gate and apply that to the entire group. And the different colors is just telling me that this gate has not been applied to the entire gating, to the entire group gating strategy. So I could just right click and copy this one to the group as well. And then I can select the gate for perforin, for example. Okay, perforin is another intracellular marker. And in this case, what I see is that my cells are all squished next to the 0. So I may want, to look at my my data in a better way without changing the actual data. So FlowJo allows you to transform the axis without transforming the data itself. So what I could do, if I want to spread this population a little bit more, I can transform the axis on the T button right here, and I could move right away from linear to logarithmic or reset the axis, or I can customize them. What I want to do in this case, it's basically extend or expand the 0 a little bit. This way, my population of cells is expanded as well. So it's a kind of zoom within the 0. To do that, I can just change the width basis. And now you see that I start to see also 10 to the second value right here and so on. Just remember that you can also increase or decrease negative and positive decades within your plot. So in case you need to visualize extra decades that you don't see over 10 to the 4th, which is like rare, just remember you can do that here. Okay, so if I now apply this, my cloud is a little bit nicer, and I can set the gate for my perforin. Okay, so I can copy this one as well, copy analysis to group, and I can set my final gate, which is phosphor ERK. Okay, so I take the FMOs that does not contain phosphor ERK, I select phosphor ERK, and eventually I want to do the same thing here. So customize my axis and basically increase the space, let's say like visualize a little bit better the 0 values, the values next to 0, right? And then I can set my gate. Okay, so now all my gates are set on my FMOs, and what I can do is take these gates from my FMOs and then drag and drop them into my stain samples. Now, if I look at my stain samples, they have the gates for the FMOs. And the cool thing is that if I plot CD8 versus interferon gamma, I do have the gate. And in this case, I do have the marker for interferon gamma. What I don't have is stimulation. So the percentage of positive cells for interferon gamma is really low. But if I move on to my next stimulation conditions, where I actually stimulated the cells to produce interferon gamma, I do see that. Okay, so you can just navigate through that. And now you see that the analysis was quite fast compared to just analyzing each sample individually. Okay, so the last thing that I want to do before creating my final report is adding statistics. So FlowJo offers you a variety of statistics that you can add depending on your needs and what you want to know about your data. If you go under workspace, you do have a full statistic tab right here. By using this tab, you can add right away the median, CV, or frequency of parent, grandparent, or total, or you can go directly onto add statistics. So right here, you will have all the different statistics that you can add. Let's say that we want to know how is the MFI for interferon gamma, phosphor ERK, and perforin within our CD8 population. So in my case, I would choose the median within the CD8 population. So right here, you select the population and you can add multiple statistics. So I could ask for the median of phosphor ERK, perforin, and interferon gamma. Now, I do know that some people have the question, should we add median or mean? That's up to you. I personally prefer the median because it's less sensitive to the outliers, because the median sits right in the middle of the distribution of your data. So it's not affected that much from values, from low values or high values as the median could be. So I click add and close. Even the media, even the statistics can be added or copied to the group. So now you see they are black because they have not been applied to the group. And I can just select copy analysis to group. Okay, now at this point, my analysis is completed. What I want to do is create a report for my analysis. To create a report for your analysis, you can use the layout editor, which is this L or ruler that you see on top of the screen. And if I click on that, I have a white page. I personally prefer to have both pages next to each other because the layout editor works a lot with drag and drop. So whatever I want to see, I will need to drag and drop it from my workspace into the layout editor. So what I can do, I can take my CD8 population right here. And now I do have my gate for interferon gamma. So everything that is outside of the gate can be edited by right-clicking, or sorry, outside of the plot can be edited by right-clicking on the plot. So if I right-click on this plot, I can copy this selection with or without transparency. I can duplicate it, I can delete it, and so on. I can add adjunct histograms. So in this case, I can see two histograms for two markers, okay? So now I have 1 and 2. And one more thing that I can do is to show the ancestry. So if I select ancestry, I now have the full gating strategy that I have performed from lymphocytes to singlets to live, CD3 and CD8. The ancestry can be horizontal or vertical. I prefer to have it horizontal right here. Remember, you can always move the page breaks. These interruptions right here are page breaks. You can make it bigger and so on. Okay. So the next thing that I want to do, this is just for interferon gamma. The next thing I want to do is duplicate this one and visualize. I don't need the ancestry anymore because it's the same. And visualize, for example, phosphor ERK. So to change the parameters on the plot, you can just right-click on the plot. So if I right-click here, I can select phosphor ERK. And then I want to duplicate this one and visualize, perforin. Okay. So if you want to keep everything to a single page, onto a single page, you can always right-click anywhere it's white, basically where you don't have plots, and just select scale to page. This will scale everything to page. And the next thing that I always do is to align my plots because I really don't like them to be disaligned. So what I do is selecting all the plots and then onto a range, I can just align them all on top and I can eventually space them correctly. So now these are my plots for interferon gamma, phosphor ERK, and perforin for donor 1, condition 1. So I really don't want to do that for all of my samples, but luckily FlowJo has done that for the rest of my samples in my workspace. So right here, I can select the group to look at, and that's one of the reasons why you want to work with groups. So I'm in the donors group, correct? And I can tell FlowJo to iterate by sample. And in this case, I can navigate through all of my samples. So basically, I can look at all of my samples one by one and make sure that everything is fine and so on. Now, what happens if you want to edit a gate and you realize that one of the gates is incorrect? If you right-click on the plot where you want to edit the gate, you realize, first of all, that right here, I cannot edit the gate. I can just move the plots because these are static images. What I can do if I right-click, it's open the original graph. And in this case, I can move my gate and I can adjust it and so on. Okay, in case you want to move it. Okay, so remember that you can always edit the specifics on the axis, the fonts, and so on. So as I mentioned before, everything that is outside of a plot can be edited by right-clicking, but if you double-click on the plot, you can edit what's inside of the plot. So you can specify what you see on your axis, you can visualize the specific type of plot. This can be pseudo color or dot plot or whatever you prefer. You can use large dots and you can show a background grid. So if I do that now, I've changed from pseudo color to dot plot and I see the background grid. You can choose to annotate your axis. So for example, if you don't want to see the parameter name right here, you can just label your axis with perforin and CD8. Okay, so now I don't see the parameter name anymore. I just see the markers. You can choose the font. You can increase the font for the axis labels or the axis numbers for the legend and so on. Okay, and finally, you can choose whatever you want to visualize in your legend. So if I now show the legend, I do have my donor number and my subset name. Remember, if I want to edit the size of my legend, I can go into fonts and within legend, I can just increase the size. Okay. Now this is a little bit bigger. What? Okay, I see something in the chat. Can you show the statistics in the legend? That's the question. Yes. So if you select the legend right here, you can add statistics. In this case, it only adds the count because it's only present the count, but I can select the statistics and I can choose whatever I want. Add, close, apply, and close. Okay. Oops. Let me see if I can make it a little bit smaller, but just as you know, you can always have zoom in or zoom out the layout by minus or plus. Okay. Okay. Okay, so what's next? What else do we want to do? So we may want to save this report for our analysis or for our, I don't know, notebook and stuff like that. So if you go on to File, you can export this image as PNG, JPEG, GIF, EMF, PDF, SVG, or TIFF. The TIFF one is the one with the highest resolution, while if you want to edit the plots or edit the ticks and so on the axis, you can export it as an SVG. SVG is a vectorial file, which means that can be ungrouped. Everything that is on a plot can be ungrouped, but it will only work in a vectorial software, which is not PowerPoint. Now, I'm not sure I can say which one is. I'm allowed to say which one is, but PowerPoint will not allow you to ungroup. What you can do in PowerPoint, though, from FlowJo, it's really nice because you can create a batch of all these data right here. So instead of saving individual images of this, what you can do, you can create a batch report of all the samples that you have in your workspace. Okay, so now I have one document right here, one batch that has all the information for all the samples in my workspace. So I have 20 sets of plots, 20 sets of 3 plots for all of my samples. You can always, instead of creating a batch into a new layout, you can send your batch to PowerPoint, or you can save it as a PDF, or you can send it directly to the printer or to a web page and so on. So just keep in mind that you can always do that within your batch report. Okay. And then the last thing that I want to show you is how to create tables within FlowJo. The table editor is located next to the layout editor. So it's this grid right here, this table right here. And as the layout editor, it's a white page and it works with drag and drop. So you have this white page right here, and the only thing that you need to do is drag and drop whatever you want to see as a table. So let's say that I want to take all of my populations plus my statistics. Okay, if I drag and drop only the populations, I will see the frequency of parent right here. Remember, you can always edit the name of your columns. Okay, so this will be phosphor, perforin, gamma. Okay, I see there is a question, which is, is it possible to modify a gate for all the same gates in the batch? My advice would be edit the gates. If you have a synchronized group, the gate will be modified automatically, or just edit the gates on the graphical window, apply that to the group, and then recreate the batch. I mean, creating a batch really takes like a few seconds. So it is not, it's probably the same time. So my advice is always to do that. First, check your samples by iterations by samples. Define where do you want to have your gate, and then create the batch. The batch should be the final step whenever everything has been checked and controlled. Okay, so now here I have my my statistics. What I can do, I can take these columns, for example, and I can alternate that, or I can move them around, so I can change the order of my columns. This is not a table yet. This is just what FlowJo will use to create the table. So you first tell FlowJo what you want to have in the table, and then you create a table. The table will be created on display as default. Now you see here, I've changed the name of my columns, and it will create a table for the group that you are working on. And this is a table on display. So it will open up on my screen, and I can just check the numbers right here, and it's a black and white table. There are several other options that you can use. So first of all, you can choose the group to create the statistics. So just imagine you don't want to have a table that includes all the statistics for all the samples in that specific group, but just want to have a few samples of that group. You can do that. You create a new group, and then you select that specific group, and then you create the table. Or instead of having a black and white table, what you can do, you can have a heat map table. So I can select all the statistics that I want to heat map. If I go under visualize, I have this icon right here, which says heat map. And as you see this kind of fire next to the names, this means that this statistic will be heat mapped. So if I go back on my table editor, I can create a heat map table right here. And as you see right now, this heat map table, it's way more nice, I would say. And you can also order the samples based on the values of one specific marker. For example, I could order this table based on the expression or the values for the MFI for phosphor. Just by double clicking on this column, it will pop up the first sample that has the highest MFI for phosphor, or I could do the same for interferon gamma, and so on. To go back to the original order, you just need to double check twice on the first column right here. I see there is a question. Is it possible to do calculations between different parameters? Yes, you can use these options right here, expected range, and then you can select which parameter do you want. Okay. If you leave it to display, it means that the table will just be displayed on your screen. But sometimes we want to export the tables in a format that we can then perform statistics on that. So for that, instead of using to display, you can send it to a file. So you can generate a text file, a CSV file, an Excel file, and so on. These are all options that are available. Don't be scared if you don't see it, because it will not pop up on display, but will just generate a file on the location that you specify right here. Or eventually you can send it to the current layout. Okay, so you can, let's make a nice heat map table and send it to the layout. Okay, so I can create a table, and it says that tables are not updated live. And here is my heat map table, and I can use it on my layout. Okay, so I can have it right here. I have all the information I need. Okay, perfect. So this was a really quick introduction to all the basic features of FlowJo, and all you need to have if you are doing a conventional analysis, or all you need to know if you're doing this kind of easy and straightforward analysis. Just remember, when you save your workspace, save it from the FlowJo icon right here, because you have multiple options. If you can save it as a workspace, which is what we have right now, which will save a link to the FCS files. So if you delete your FCS files, you may not find them in the workspace when you reopen it. In that case, or if you are a person that quickly or often deletes the files, then I recommend you to save it as an archive, which is a zip folder that contains a copy of your FCS files and then the workspace and all the informations. Remember that you can always save it to BD Research Cloud. Just as a quick note, this is free. So everyone can use BD Research Cloud. You just need to create a FlowJo account, which is as well free. So just check it out, or follow the webinar on BD Research Cloud, which is much nicer when you just don't have files on your computer, and then you can just share them within the cloud with your colleagues. And finally, if you do perform the same analysis over and over with different samples, but you have the same panel, the same gating strategy, you can save this format right here with gating strategy, with group gating strategy, with layout setup as a template. So you can save it as a template, which will save all the layouts and everything. So you just need to load your data, and then of course, double check the gates, the statistics, and so on. Okay. Is it possible to know a percentage of events not show in dot plot? I'm not sure I got this question. So you don't want to see the percentage of the events in the dot plot, or I'm not sure I get the questions. What you can surely see, what you can surely do is right here should be events inside. Right here. So instead of having a percentage of the events inside the gate, you have the events outside the gate. But I'm not sure I got your question. So if you could reformulate the question in a different way, I'll be happy to support. Meanwhile, do you guys have any more questions for me? I don't want to take more of your time. Okay, so I don't see more questions. Good. And for Angel Jimenez, just let me Okay, let me pop up my email address again. So in case anyone needs that. And as well for the person that asked me the question, you can send me an email. Maybe you can send me a screenshot of your data, and so I can interpret what you need to do. If you make a batch layout, how can you make it fit onto a couple of pages? You can make it fit to one page, which is not my recommendation, but what you can do when you make a layout, you can choose to have it in separate pages, and you can choose in how many rows, and if you want to batch in rows or columns, and how many plots do you want, or if you want to batch across or down, and if you want to batch in separate pages. Okay. Heat maps are not updated live, so it doesn't create a batch for the heat map. Want to try? Let's see. It should not create that. Indeed. It's taking time. It's probably assigning the same table heat map to each sample, which is not something useful, I believe. The layout editor, anyway, it's customizable. You can make graphs and, well, not graphs. You can add, yeah, indeed, it's creating a heat map for each set of plots, which is not what I would like to have. Okay. More questions? Okay, just remember this is recorded. So here is my email address in case you need help, or serena@flowjo.com. Okay, so if there are no more questions, it was nice to see you guys. I will be having more webinars in November, but there will be always webinars from FlowJo. So you can either join live, and that will be later at night, like later in the evening, like 7 p.m. Or you can wait for the next one from me. Bye all. Thank you.